What's going on, guys? I'm Ghosty, and today we're going to be going over how to aim and land your shots to secure that exile in Spellbreak. There are 6 different gauntlets in Spellbreak, and they all require different techniques to properly aim and track. I will be going over the main spells of each gauntlet and some general tips that may help you in understanding how to aim. When aiming in Spellbreak, the most important thing to remember is that everything is a projectile. There is absolutely no hit scan in this game, so that means you must lead all of your shots. The most important thing before we even go in game is finding the right sensitivity for you. Everyone plays differently, and finding the right sense you are comfortable with is key in landing as many shots as possible. Don't be discouraged if you're changing your sense around for months, as it can take time to settle into something that's fully comfortable for you. The lower your sensitivity, the easier it will be to track players, but you're giving up movement and quicker reaction time during certain circumstances. On the screen, you'll see what my sensitivity is at, which is considered high sense, and it's mostly due to the fact I enjoy getting flick shots and 360s. At the end of the day, sense comes down to your preference, and determining where to change your sense to will be based on how you're missing your shots. If you are aiming too far ahead, perhaps you need to lower your sense so that the same input will put the reticle closer to the player model where it needs to be. If you're aiming too close and not leading enough, think about increasing your sensitivity so the same movement places the reticle in the appropriate spot. Once you have your sense in a suitable spot, you'll be making minor adjustments until you feel fully comfortable. Now, when you hit a shot, remember that moment in your head. Make a mental image of the reticle placement and recall that moment when you go for future shots. It's important to understand how to lead your shots well, learn the projectile speed, and where your reticle should be in place compared to the opponent. Every gauntlet behaves differently and requires different reticle placement. However, as a general rule, if the player is moving to the left, you want to aim at their left side around their arm or shoulder, and vice versa for the right side. If the player is falling, you want to aim for their ankles or feet, or if they're going up, you want to aim at their neck or head. This of course varies depending on the speed the player is moving and the distance from which you are shooting your spells. Lightning Gauntlet is like an assault rifle or minigun and requires you to remain grounded and nearly stationary to output the most possible damage. This gauntlet has a very fast projectile speed and requires the most precise tracking out of the other gauntlets. As it is the fastest projectile, it requires the least amount of lead, and your reticle will typically be very close to the opponent's player model. See the examples of my reticle placement and take note of the distance between me and the player and try to replicate this in game. Fire Gauntlet is like a disc launcher or rocket launcher and can be accurately shot whether you're in the air or grounded. The gauntlet is pretty slow projectile and requires plenty of lead unless you're directly in front of them, which I do not suggest as you will inflict damage on yourself from the AoE explosion. See the examples of my reticle placement and take note of the distance between me and the player and try to replicate this in game. Frost Gauntlet is like a bow or sniper rifle and can be accurately shot whether you're in the air or the ground. The gauntlet is a fast projectile and the lead required is entirely based on distance due to its long range. You never want to use the gauntlet in close combat as there are better options, so save it for that mid to long range. Frost is one of the most difficult gauntlets since it requires precision aim and long distances can be very difficult to predict. It is always better to take the shot when you have the opportunity rather than waiting for the full charge. See the examples of my reticle placement and take note of the distance between me and the player and try to replicate this in game. Toxic Gauntlet is like a shotgun and can be accurately shot at close distances but can prove to be difficult while in the air due to the way the gauntlet shoots. The projectile is pretty slow and is aimed differently than many gauntlets due to the way it curves in the air. You can also take advantage of the gauntlet to spray people from distance and apply corrosion to soften them up. See the examples of my reticle placement and take note of the distance between me and the player and try to replicate this in game. Wind Gauntlet is like an SMG and can be accurately shot in close to mid-range and can be accurately shot while grounded or in the air. The projectile is quite fast and is also very big, so it has room for error in your aim. This gauntlet is great when people get up in your face or to quickly finish off opponents. See the examples of my reticle placement and take note of the distance between me and the player and try to replicate this in game. Stone Gauntlet is difficult to compare to other weapons as it creates tremors on the ground in a straight line. The attack can only be used while grounded and if cast in the air will not shoot out until you've touched the ground. The projectile is quite fast but has a very wide hitbox, so is mostly based on timing and positioning. This gauntlet works well for close to medium range to deal massive damage to your opponents. See the examples of my reticle placement and take note of the distance between me and the player and try to replicate this in-game. With this aim guide, you'll have a better understanding of how you should be aiming in Spellbreak. Take the information you have learned today and apply it in-game, and the rest will be how many hours of practice you put in. If you have any tips that helped you learn how to aim better, let me know in the comments below. This is Ghosty. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And don't forget you can also follow me on Twitch and Twitter for more content and updates. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the HoloLands.